Hello, this is Greg House from Green Greg's Garden and Worm Farm. Hoping you'll join me on this new adventure of mine with high desert gardening. High desert gardening provides quite a challenge above and beyond conventional gardening in most parts of the United States of America. Now, I used to garden in Alabama. I got a lot of videos on this channel about the gardens I did in Alabama. But I figure it's like this: if you can grow in the desert, you can grow anywhere. There are a lot of challenges with high desert gardening you just don't face anywhere else. Not only is it dry because it's a desert, not only is it hot, but it can be hot in other places too. The dry air sucks moisture out of the ground. The ground, of course, everybody thinks about the ground is soaking up the moisture, and it does, and it will. But the air will suck the moisture out. The reason I got these sunk beds is because raised beds are more susceptible to wind and drying. If the beds are down in the soil, they're less susceptible to drying and will maintain temperature stability just a little bit better through the year than beds that are raised beds. Plus, there's the moisture retention. Raised beds let moisture out so you don't have excess moisture accumulating in them. That's not usually a problem here. Even in monsoon season, it does seem to sink down. So the sunk beds seem to be working just fine. These sunk beds were an approach that similar to what the Native Americans around here use, and that's one of the reasons I come up with this idea. They used waffle grid, in which they would dig little adjacent pits out in a little waffle grid pattern and plant inside of those. And again, it was subsurface. Well, I just kind of extended that to make larger beds to accommodate my three sisters approach. And then I discovered afterwards this is pretty much the same approach that the Sumerians actually used for their gardening. So I have a validation after further research. My gardening technique here is actually thousands of years old. So hopefully this will make a big difference, and it has. Last year I had about half as many beds up here in this garden, and I was using 100 gallons a week to water my garden. Now I have 6 times more bed area, and I'm using 209 gallons. So I figure I'm actually saving about, on a square foot basis, only using about a third of the water that I was. The sunk beds retain the water better. The wood below, and which will eventually rot into a hugelkultur, and the wood chips above, wood chips, the compost, it's got wood in it unfortunately, is all moisture retaining. So between those, I've got good steps to help retain moisture. It makes like a sponge. As it rots out more, these will be better beds in the future. Now, some of the key challenges here out in the desert are rats. And rats are one of the reasons that we put this metal up around the edge of the garden here. Now, I ran out of sheet metal when I was building this garden. I did use some hardware cloth and just a couple small places, but it's mostly sheet metal. And this is to keep the cows out. So rats and cows, it's not quite enough to keep deer out. I need to get some dogs to keep the cows and deer away. But this all definitely helps. And this is why I like the 8-foot fence post, because part of it is for the metal and part of it is for the hog wire up there. Now, the other thing, that you'll run a lot of other problems. Birds are a problem out here, and the problem with that, the Tweety birds here in the desert actually they're needing water. And so what they will do is, unlike in Alabama, they will pluck up your seedlings when they first start coming up. They'll pluck you everything up almost. I had a heck of a time last year fighting the Tweety birds from destroying my garden. Little Tweety birds were as bad as a herd of cattle. They really decimated my garden. And that's why this year I learned to put the chicken wire. And I had chicken wire over these beds, just like the beds in my garden above. It still has the chicken wire. That garden was a little later getting started than this garden, so I removed the chicken wire here because you can see everything's grown up above the ground level now. So this garden is past the point of needing the chicken wire. You only need it when you got little seedlings popping up, and I still have a few seedlings popping up in my upstairs garden, my upper garden as I call it, my market garden. So birds are a problem. Dry air is a problem. Of course, wind is a huge problem here in the desert. And here's something else that's different. In Alabama, I always had cats, and the cats never bothered my garden. But one of my cats I brought from Alabama here did something he never did in Alabama. He discovered he liked to lay on top of my little squash plants when they first came up. So what the birds didn't get, the cat was squashing. And I guess it was because they were cool and moist and this area was so hot that he adopted a behavior he never practiced in Alabama. So you find some strange problems and differences. Are you planting your fall garden yet? This is a perfect time to start planting your fall garden. Your fall garden, there's a lot of greens you can grow, radishes and different things like that, beets. One of the best sources for seeds like that is True Leaf Market. Check out my link to True Leaf Market. My affiliate marketing link will be in the show notes posted below. You can get some really good seeds from True Leaf Market. Another key difference is cows. This is free-range country. Free-range country means that the cows here have priority over the people. You have to fence your areas in to keep the cows out. And legally, the cows can roam across anybody and everybody's property unless you fence them out. I am struggling just to fence in my garden. I'm not yet prepared to fence in the entire property. Like I said, I'm struggling to get my gardens fenced in. This garden here, as you can see, is fenced in. This is a garden big enough to grow all the food that I will need, and then some, actually. So this is my personal garden. I have a market garden up there, and I have a chicken garden over here, which the cows have decimated. I will show you a little bit about that in an upcoming video, which will be called Cowpocalypse or Invasion of the Garden Snatchers. So, but you can see their tracks out there, and they actually came up to the edge of my fence here, and were probably testing it, hoping to get in. They stepped right next to my fence here. They were wanting to get in here because they saw all this and they wanted to eat it. Fortunately, that has not happened yet. Now, a determined cow could even get through this stuff. So maybe I will add an electric fence around this too at some point in time. Another big challenge here is the soil is very alkaline. The soil is so alkaline that if you pour vinegar on it or pour a cola on it, Coca-Cola, it will fizz like an Alka-Seltzer. It will literally fizz. It's crazy. I pour vinegar on it. In fact, I traded this ground with vinegar before I ever planted anything last year. But this year, my beds are probably a little bit on the acidic side since I'm using so much compost in them. So I got a different garden bed than last year. This pile of stuff behind me was what I scraped off the garden beds where I had my raised beds last year. Last year, I did not want raised beds. But I plowed this ground out here gets really hard. I plowed it with a turning plow. I turned it with a disc. I tilled it with a tiller. And I was only able to break about so much dirt up. And it wasn't really enough to grow in, so I had to scrape it together into raised beds. Not what I wanted, but it's what I had to do last year. This year I brought in the heavy equipment. And that's not cheap. I won't lie to you. There's nothing cheap about if you're making a big garden out here. A lot of people just grow in containers and do small gardens, because it's so much work to do what I'm trying to do out here. But it is doable. But the soil is a challenge. So to recapitulate, your main challenges out here with gardening are the dry air, alkaline soil, soil that is poor. I mean, what they call topsoil here would pass for really bad subsoil in Alabama. I mean, the soil is very nutrient deficient. You got to add stuff to it. Adding cow manure or manure products can be a really big problem, because a lot of these animals are fed hay that's treated with Grazon. Grazon will kill all your garden plants. They won't grow at all. It'll kill them. So you don't want to use that. You've got to find a real trusted manure source if you're to use a manure. I understand there are some out here. I haven't found the right ones yet, because I do have a manure pile back there. Actually, let me show you these piles. This pile here is a mix of local soil that I made more neutral instead of highly alkaline by mixing with vinegar. I mixed a lot of vinegar into it. I added some worm castings I brought from Alabama and made a topsoil out of it. It's a little better. You can see it's a little darker than this stuff here. All this does have a lot of native nutrient poor soil in it, and that's what I tried to grow in last year. And you can see it's actually got some nice lamb's quarters growing up in it. Now, I've never seen lamb's quarters grow this nice in Alabama, because all the leaves have been ate up by insects in Alabama. So this is kind of a natural growing substance. It's actually better and easier to grow. So I've always had problems growing spinach. This stuff grows real good. Lamb's quarter. And it's growing really well here. Now, over here, I was sold manure as fertilizer. You don't see nothing growing in it. Why? It's toxic. apparently it was a grazon. It's been sitting there for 2 years now, and still nothing growing. I tried to sprout radish in as a test last year. The radish would not sprout. I can grow radish on paper towels. I can grow radish. I've grown a lot of radish microgreens on little rolls of felt. I have grown radishes in the ground. I used to grow lots of radishes, but here now, no radishes. Bottom line, this is a toxic manure pile. In another year or two, maybe to break down. I watered a lot to try to help accelerate the breakdown of the grazon that's inside of it. And indeed, I am growing in the desert. You can see I've got stuff coming up pretty well here. And you can see over here, it's kind of interesting, the stuff on this side of the beds tends to be larger than farther out. I think it's because it's got more shielding from the wind. The wind is real hard on plants out here, by the way. It dries them out, blows them out, and roughs them up. But I got this metal down here at the bottom of my beds to keep rats out. There's a bit of an earth berm here that we pushed out when we made this garden. Plus those juniper trees out there, which usually provide haven for rats. But my cats, hopefully, are taking care of those here this close to the house. But it does provide a windbreak on this side, which has helped this garden out quite a bit above and beyond my other garden. Now, here I've got corn that's a lot taller than up there. Now, part of it is I did plant this corn earlier, although that corn down there was planted before this corn up here. Again, perhaps a little bit of shading, perhaps a little bit of windbreak. So all these things combined together. These beds here haven't been as sand filled from the wind as the ones in my garden up there. You will see in a little bit. You can see more of the compost here. Although this compost has got a lot of wood in it. It all came from trees. So that's the challenge in it, robbing nitrogen out of the garden. I got several different kinds of squash. In my garden, I have many different varieties of winter squash and a few different pumpkins planted up here. And I've even got some of that lumbar, the big, really big giant squash. I've got watermelon growing here. And I got a nice watermelon vine down there. I believe it's already blooming a little bit. Looks like I may see a little bit of a melon trying to form right there. So these aren't big melons. These are more your Navajo variety. Looks like a seed that escaped and is growing in the middle here. Some beans. This is squash, beans, mostly three sisters here. I planted squash, corn, and beans. The idea is beans should be able to climb the corn, and the beans would provide nitrogen for the corn, and the squash will eventually provide ground cover to help keep the moisture in the ground for all of it as it starts growing. Hopefully I won't have to water as much then. The downside is this: because this soil is so woody, the wood as it decays robs nitrogen from the soil, and that is a real detriment to the corn. So I planted the beans early, but what I didn't know initially was that even young beans are robbing nitrogen from the ground too. So the corn struggled at first. This corn in this garden did not struggle as much as the corn in the upper garden. But I had a secret sauce for that, which I'll explain a little bit further down in here. So this is all how we're getting this to go, make it grow. The corn, beans, and squash. Now, another reason for having corns, beans, and squash, am I getting a bloom in here? Yes. My squash is starting to bloom. Yay! Now, I know when it first starts to bloom, it's kind of gay. It makes all male flowers the first few weeks. So, that's kind of interesting. But what you will find is that the reason I'd picked the three sisters is because this is a food that I can put up without needing refrigeration, without having to can, and all those steps. I'm a guy without much time, so I don't really have time to do all the processing. It's actually going pretty good at the end of the garden down here. These beds here were planted first, actually. Those two beds are outgrown as well as the ones up there. Now, just notice the difference, guys. I planted these two beds first, and the beds up there are going far better. Again, I think it's because of the windbreak, that maybe a little bit of shade, different things like that. So, but I did plant okra down here, and not much of it's come up. I planted okra in several places. The only okra I got that's coming up is right here, over here, and a little bit over here. Might be a little bit in here, but mostly that's beans. So yeah, I do want some okra. We'll have hopefully some watermelon. I love watermelon. I got watermelon right here. I did have a watermelon. That's not watermelon. This is some oddball variety. Anyway, I did have a watermelon down at the other end to go with this one. And I think that plant's gone now. You do lose a lot of plants up here in the high desert. So these are things to bear in mind. So my garden here is looking a lot better than it did last year. Fortunately, it rained last night. Look, I got some big squash. I didn't have anything this big at this point last year. So I got a good chance I will make some good stuff here. I did make a lot of spaghetti squash last year and some butternut squash. Spaghetti squash did the best. I did some pumpkins that grew well here. In fact, I think even down here where the stuff is not as big, and my upper garden is all better than my garden was at this time last year. So I am really confident. I got to thin some of this stuff out. And so this is going to be an adventure. This is a learning experiment. These beds are not finely tuned yet. When all the wood rots in the bottom, they turn into a hugelkultur. There'll be a far better garden bed than what I have now. And my watermelons are trying to bloom. Yay! Hopefully I'll have some watermelons here real soon. I'm a big fan of watermelon. This garden, like the garden below, is planted out mostly in the Three Sisters format with corn, squash, and beans. See the beans, the corn. Now, what they don't tell you about planting beans and corn, they tell you that the beans are going to supply nitrogen and corn to help it grow. But at first, when the beans are starting out, they use nitrogen too. So they're not helping the corn from the start. Get out of my bed, cat. Good grief, these cats. Fortunately, they're not as big as cows. That's all I got to say. But the corn here is not doing as well as the corn up downstairs, my downstairs garden, especially the corn on this side. This corn though was planted before that corn over there. That corn over there is bigger than this corn over here. Now, this is a different variety. This is the Hopi blue corn all down here. And maybe that's part of the answer. Part of the answer may also be that the way I fertilize these beds. So I got to tell you about that. See, I got some more squash just starting up. I wish these cats would stay out of my garden. I can't keep them out. You can see different plants are doing and growing at different rates down here. I got some squash plants that are growing. I've planted several different varieties of winter squash. And over here I got some summer squash. Cat will just stay in the bed. Jeez. I got some beans that are growing real tall. That's an Indian bean that is really a big bean. I don't know what to do with these cats, which I mean nuts. Anyway, so I get cats to keep rats out of the beds, but the cats will actually tear up plants too. Beats all I ever saw. So these beds over here, that looks like it still got some moisture in from yesterday. Now, so I got some other varieties of blue corns up here. It's a different variety than down there. The beans are climbing up already. I got to stake these out. I'm going to have to remove all this pretty soon and stake these out. That's why I need to get this fence put up in a hurry. So there's a little difference in the corn up here and the corn down there. The corn down there is growing taller. The corn over here is not growing as tall as the corn over here. Now, a part of that is because of the way I have fertilized it. When those beds all started up here, all this compost was a black compost that had a lot of wood in it. You can't see it now because of all the sand that's blown in, but you see a little bit of it. When I got it, you could see a lot of black, but the black washed down and the wood's what's left at the top. Wood breaking down robs nitrogen from the soil. And when you rob nitrogen from the soil, that's a problem for corn. Corn is a heavy feeder that requires a lot of nitrogen. So what I had to do for these, now for the beds down there, they were better off to start with, and I got to admit the reason being is because, well, I poured urine in those beds before I planted. Now, that is not something I would do in a market garden. That's my personal garden down there. Nothing I can grow in that garden that will I sell. That's just for my own self. This is my market garden, so I wouldn't do that up here. So the plants suffered more. I was hoping the beans would help the corn. And then I find out that young beans actually rob nitrogen from the soil. When they get bigger, start going bigger, then they start adding the nitrogen in the soil, and that helps the corn. So I had to get some bone meal, feather meal, blood meal stuff. I found me some natural fertilizers. I do everything organic, and was able to put that out. And the corn that was planted earlier benefited less from that, probably than the corn I planted down here later. But this is also a different variety, so there may be some different things playing into that. But I did the Three Sisters. I probably shouldn't have done that so much for the market garden, but the Three Sisters gives you a way to have things you can plant that will last through the winter. Beans last, winter squash last, and corn will last. These are all long-term things you don't have to can, you don't have to freeze it. It will all last throughout most of the winter. I do have a few squash. In fact, I cut a pumpkin just a few weeks ago, and the meat was still good. And here I am near the end of July. It was early July. So I'm really surprised how long. Now, a lot of these winter squash won't last that long, but I've been surprised at how well they actually have done. This is one of the last beds I planted Three Sisters in, the squash that are in here. I don't see too many of them coming up right now. I think something come here and got a bunch of them. Animals can still get in here, but not as much. And they may have been buried by the sand. But I did have, there's some squash. They hadn't been buried by the sand. There's some squash. Maybe if they just got sand buried. I gotta tell you, I gotta put it in a windbreak. And here I got some beans planted. And I planted some okra. The okra up here has not come up at all. I've got a lot of okra in Alabama. A lot of okra, no problem. But I'm having trouble getting it going up here. I've seen people grow okra though. So I may have to replant it. But then again, look at all the sand that's blew in on top. The seeds are probably just too deep. So that's just an issue where you get so much sand blowing in on top of stuff. That's something this garden is more susceptible to than the garden down there, because I'm up on a hill and because I don't have the windbreaks I've got down there built in. That's why I'm planning to add some windbreaks. So we'll see how this comes out. All these beds will be filled with compost, and you can see we started there, we just ran out. And eventually I'll plant all these out. I'll plant out my trees down here and maybe grow some more stuff beside them. I do plan to put an electric fence around that area down there. So that's the plans up here for this garden. Don't forget to subscribe, bang the bell, and click all to get more notifications from my videos. I'll be doing a lot more stuff on gardening. So stay with me through this gardening adventure. And for another video, one on which I show the earthwork to prepare this place, the beginnings of it, click right here. And thank you all for watching. Greg out.